The death of a game, Stormgate, Nerd Slayer.
Fast-paced RTS games. That was my first love. Yeah, even before Halo shooters and of course the online RPG and MMORPG virtual world genre most of you probably know me for. I detailed this in my StarCraft 2 video, a video that's recommended watch material. Think of this like a mini sequel episode to that, even if the games were leagues apart. I am a StarCraft 1 fanboy through and through, as most of you probably know. But through the fandom, I was connected to virtual worlds in a very interesting way, with the creators of StarCraft 1 being one of the big designers behind Guild Wars 1, making my transition, if you want to call it that, not that uncommon or strange. Why even use the word transition, besides for memes? Well, because we haven't seen that many RTS games, especially since the pre-2010s, making it a less popular in culture zeitgeist genre.
I'm sorry, what are RTS games?
And even MMORPGs in some ways, and that's saying something these days. Sad. So what am I talking about, Willis? Well, we had another RTS game come and promise to make things right in the world and return the RTS genre to premier glory. Problem is, like many that came before, it didn't happen. Stormgate was highly touted and advertised as being from former StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3 Blizzard developers. Originally announced in the summer of 2022 and would release first in early access 2 years later in 2024, before launching fully August 5th, 2025 just recently as of the time of this video. But Stormgate would raise a ton of attention, even being mentioned by me in my StarCraft 2 video due to a key giveaway, and being hyped by all of the biggest RTS names in the biz even. Within just a few months after each of its launches, even though it failed to maintain a workable competitive population, let alone a casual one at all. What went wrong with nearly $40 million in budgeting, and how did supposed industry vets fail to impress casual and competitive players alike? On this episode of Death of a Game, a series where we investigate the largest contributing factors to the death or dying of a game or company by utilizing a timeline of events filled with clues and bits of evidence.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
Death of a Game, a series where we investigate the largest, nearly $40 million in budgeting, and how did supposed
Bro, do you see that face down here? What the fuck?
Industry vets fail to impress casual and competitive players alike?
Sorry.
On this episode of Death of a Game, a series where we investigate the largest contributing factors to the death or dying of a game or company by utilizing a timeline of events filled with clues and bits of evidence we uncover along the way. Pay attention along the way to pick up on any clues as they present themselves. And stay tuned to the end for the final deduction, where the best detectives get to show their moment in the sun and crack the case. Pick your faction detectives. We've got 3 to choose from. Hotkeys to master. A case of some random haters thinking that I wouldn't cover this game for some reason, despite this kind of being my whole gig. And a legacy with a behemoth level shadow to escape. Something mess with the bull, get the horns. The story begins with the founding of Frostgiant, originally founded in 2020 by a couple dozen supposed Blizzard veterans. I say supposed because we only know of the big bill names involved really, like Tim Campbell, who was a director on Wasteland 3, a CRPG survival style game that I actually really enjoyed, and the campaign designer on Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne. Tim Morton, who was the CEO of Frostgiant, was a former producer on StarCraft 2's Legacy of the Void expansion, now running the
so that's a big name.
Finally, we had the likes
of StarCraft was big back in the day. We watched the video on the tournaments and shit, right? That was huge! Bro, what happened?
Of James Anhot, who was a pathfinding engineer on StarCraft 2. And finally, Brett Crawford, who was the lead designer on Heroes of the Storm. That's not saying much.
Warcraft
then Cara LaForge, the mother of Day 9 and Tasteless, was the head of business development, having previously worked on StarCraft esports and, of course, at Blizzard. A team had been assembled with an idea. It was like a fellowship. All that was left was funding that idea, especially if you wanted to spend so much time advertising how ex-Blizzard you were, and how closely associated you wanted to be with StarCraft and Warcraft, 2 incredibly well-supported and polished.
I'm sorry, but that's a huge red flag nowadays. Back then, you would be like, oh, awesome! So they know what they're doing. But nowadays, it's like, oh, an ex-Blizzard employee? Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck, man. Ah, shit. Ooh.
Games, something that would be putting immense pressure on them and it was pressure they put on themselves, really.
Yeah,
Frost Giant would search for funds in the form of multiple rounds of funding, investment funding, initially being funded by the likes of Kona Venture Partners and Global Founders Capital, big venture capitalist-style funding places. Series A would follow, which was actually better than
this was before they put out their first game? Hold on, they have whole offices and shit. A meeting table? Their own fucking... Oh my god! How much went into that? And why? First you'd make the game, no? Literally went from, oh yeah, to I'm sorry, like, wait a minute. Why do they have meeting rooms, interviews already? They didn't. What the fuck? That seems like a
see on the series, since they actually have a bit
decision
more time and some
by specifically the business side of things, right?
more lax requirements. Their other investments would come largely from Kakao Games, Riot Games, and Bitcraft Ventures. This would bring up their initial funding to around $34.7 million at the time.
I'm sorry, hold on. And I'm not like talking aesthetically pleasing ugly. I mean, it's like this corrupted thing looking like, right? But I'm talking about the wings specifically. Why does it look mechanic? Like it's a plain wing instead of... I mean, maybe it's not finished yet, right? Maybe
Ventures.
It's up
this
and
would bring
down,
up their initial funding to
kinda, but
$34.7 million at the time.
I guess the animation wasn't
now
finished
let's
at that
cut to
point.
the chase. Money was
there
going
we
to
go.
be needed to make a game.
All
But
right.
the game wasn't the only thing being advertised.
Okay,
This was
I was
Unreal
being
Engine 5 RTS that was being
stupid.
made by the developers behind StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3, shown front and center. Well, at least some of them. This strategy only has two outcomes. Either you bring in all the hype and get that sweet, sweet StarCraft money after that, or you crumble in the shadow of the nemesis that you chose to summon yourself, and willingly steered into it for hype revenue generation. It's like hearing about Nemesis and Resident Evil and just deciding, you know what, let me go hit this guy up. Despite claims of $100 million, StarCraft 2's budget has not really ever been clearly reported, and Blizzard has been tight-lipped on those costs, alongside Warcraft 3. But we can make some assumptions based on some other budgets that we have some ideas on. Like Age of Empires 3, an RTS of course in the Age of Empires series, which had around a $20 million budget. Adjusted for inflation, that would make their budget about $33 million today. Which would mean a game from 2005 has the same budget as a game that was trying to be the next AAA RTS in the 2020s. While things could work, if Frost Giant wasn't smart with their direction as a company and the direction of their upcoming RTS.
Well, they weren't smart with their spending, let me tell you that. For fucking sure.
Game, they could run out of money before even getting to the finish line or shortly.
Bro, they went out of money with just equipment alone. Let me tell you. Like, god damn, bro. Talk about wrong spending. I'm still on that issue. God damn it. I hate that.
After. This was exacerbated because now people had expectations you were going to be better, or at least on par with StarCraft 2, Age of Empires 4 now, and Warcraft 3. And, of course, some of your competitors like Age of Empires 4. And let's just be honest, any opportunities to steer away from this, Frost Giant just ignored. You lay your bed. Such as even claiming your new RTS, dubbed Stormgate after public announcement of June 9th, 2022, was made in response to needs that StarCraft 2 had, like co-op. Tim Morton would even claim Stormgate's focus was on social play, too. This social play was by attacking the game content world from all angles, building a competitive game with a tournament system built in, a co-op system, and a custom game system, of course. This was the same formula that StarCraft 1.
That is so much to bring out from the get-go. Oh my god, they overpromised. They did the Bethesda thing. Oh no.
And later on Warcraft 3 would follow, which led to their immense successes. But even the IGN writers were asking for something more, without necessarily asking for it directly, talking about how Warcraft had heroes, StarCraft had cool concept missions, and what was Stormgate gonna have? If their desire was to be compared to the likes of the games we just mentioned, they were going to have to come correct in all aspects that we've outlined. only initially showcasing teasings of the second faction alongside the first, the Vanguard. Think like Terran from StarCraft would be the announcement of a second faction in Stormgate, August 2023. This faction seemed very Zerg-like, with the ability to spread the Shroud instead of Creep, which functioned similar to the Creep in StarCraft. But, worse? The Creep or Shroud is far less useful in Stormgate, but we're going to talk about that more later during the gameplay section. Having some similarities from well-known factions or borrowing elements from other RTS games wasn't a bad idea, but it was important Stormgate would develop their own identity as well. Something that would be hard with how much they were leaning into the similarities here. And leaning into similarities was also harming how creative they could be and actually unique they could have each faction play, meaning that many of them played kind of like the same and there wasn't that much variety in build order. I think putting more connectivity between the world mechanics, heroes, and the powers the game features, which each faction has a set of unique ones, would have helped here, as well as putting more effort into the tooltip lore, and well, the upcoming campaign, which would be a ripe proving ground for building the world and lore for the game too. Well, if it was good. While Stormgate would have an early alpha, I wouldn't join the picture until closed beta, which I was invited to sometime in November of 2023. I had signed up to this, perhaps being a creator who is a bit...
It's not technically... It's technically not stealing if the devs worked on that game. I mean, there's, you know, ownership, and depending on what you actually did for the game, right? If you were you know, just a graphic designer, you don't really can take credit for mechanics, can you? But at the same time, I don't know what happened, right? But yeah. And also, it just because you did the code doesn't mean you came up with the idea, right? It's a very gray area, I think personally. I'll go and listen to Follow Me by Amanda Lear. Leering Center. Smiling Faces Sometimes by Undisputed Truth. 992 Arguments by OJs. One of the founders of Frustrated was the director of StarCraft 2. Well, okay, so he takes direct response. Okay, yeah, fair. That's okay, that's fair. That's big fair. All right, didn't know that.
Big fan gave me a bit of a push. The early playtesting I got to experience was rough, but so was the alpha testing I did in StarCraft 2. Though rougher in elements of like visuals and polish, which kind of should be expected because it's a smaller company, so I gave them the benefit of the doubt. To be honest, though, fair. For a closed beta test, a proper one even, I was impressed with the foundation of Stormgate thus far, and thought they could certainly build from it and had a plan to do such.
Ooh.
Despite their dozens of millions in funding, however, Stormgate would push to a Kickstarter December 5th, 2023, which is usually a move done by those who already have a budget merely to build an audience and get some community pre-started. It's also fantastic marketing, especially when your project, likely inevitably, if properly backed of course, smashes the Kickstarter money amount that you need to. The problems would arise though surrounding the Kickstarter, leading all the way up to the official launch of the game. First, the Kickstarter would talk about how the project was being fully funded, which was a good sign, but would later be proven to not be true when communications director Gerald Valordia would state defensively that the game was funded to starting early access. Oops. Worse, the money maneuvering wouldn't stop there, despite having over $30 million in funding and succeeding on a $2.3 million.
Alright, but was that he was misinformed, or was that, you know, dogs is like zerglings? Damn. Well, I mean... Yeah, I can see it.
Crowdfunding on Kickstarter, Frost Giant...
And turrets and human mechanics are, you know... the humans. I do see similarities.
And would apparently need more money. They would attempt to do this by utilizing an indie website platform Start Engine, where they would value their company at a whopping $150 million at $26 a share.
You didn't even what? You didn't even what the fuck? You didn't even bring out a single game yet. All you did was spend money and bring out an early access. Or a closed beta, even. The fuck you mean? you only brought out 10% of what you've promised so far. The fuck you mean?
This campaign dramatically failed, raising only about 480,000. It would show us that perhaps things weren't as they seemed behind the scenes. How was the company who hadn't launched a product yet already running out of so much money and having so little to show for it, and needing so much more? And why on earth did they seem so delusional already? Stormgate's early access release date would be set for later in the year, in August of 2024. And something didn't really sit right with me in hindsight. Why was a company kickstarted with investor funding launching into early access? You have no idea where the company's actual, allegiance lies. It's not the player base, because they have actual investors with investment funding. And then there's the Kickstarter stuff that they have to actually satisfy. And then the early access player base on Steam. Not only did it come across as super scummy, Thanos-level monetization gauntlet stuff, it also leads credence to the idea that they were running out of money and needed to monetize early access. This was confusing to many fans such as myself, as they were wondering, why did a free-to-play game have an early access that was paid? But like with the Kickstarter and their Ultimate Editions, Frost Giant was promising that early supported would be rewarded and you would end up with a better deal in the end. If only that was ultimately true, pun intended. Frost Giant seemed more focused on business-related activities and then putting in the groundwork to build their game out. That's how I felt, and I rarely talk about my feelings. At least that's what my therapist said. I mean, this game was set to launch in a year, and they barely just introduced their third faction. And not only was it not done, it was hilariously overpowered in testing when it was introduced. To the point that I don't even know how they didn't balance the basics of that out. And the other two factions weren't done either, with the game
those are just the very technologically advanced guys, right? The ones that can go a little invisible with the energy arm blades from StarCraft. Those look identical, no, on the ground. Just an extra pair of arms. That's it. What the fuck? Huh. Siege tank, which looks like Siege tank's analog from Red Alert. I don't know what you're talking about, man. I'm not that deep into those games, man, brother, man.
Terminating currently at tier 3, but realistically tier 2 with how slim pickings tier 3 was. But anyway, the third faction was announced, the Celestials faction. This faction would copy aspects of the Protoss with a tech-looking focus and lasers and stuff, but honestly played quite differently, which might have made them a little bit more of a struggle to balance. But at least they were taking a risk. They could actually move their main base, had flying builders, and had a strong
that is pretty cool.
Focus,
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Seemingly. While the Infernals were Zerg-like, as I stated, and utilized their fast-moving cheap units to pressure the map and accrue more creep, the Vanguard were Terran-like, being quite well-rounded, and allowing for arguably the most variety in gameplay. Celestials were the most unique, and with that came some interesting balancing problems. They were in many ways a more advanced Protoss, which seemed to be kind of interesting. Whereas the other two factions are pretty cookie-cutter copies, which is a shame. I think the Celestials showed that the team had at least some
in StarCraft 2, Terrans, Zergs, and Protoss. In Stormgate, they are humans, demons, and angels. Oh, damn. Well, I mean, how many different iterations can you do? I don't blame them for that, honestly. How many different iterations can you do? If you look at Warhammer 40k specifically, it's humans, Xeno. Yes, the Xenos are all different. Fuck. No, the Hive is Destiny. I don't know. Fuck yeah. You know what I mean. The fucking hive mind things. Then there is the Tau, then there is the Eldars, then there is the robot alien things, and they all took inspirations from human cultures, different ones, like Egyptian, different wars for the human factions, different war fronts like Germans and shit like that, and I think that's okay. Hello, Pharaoh. Hello, Scorpion. So I think it's okay to take inspirations. Well, it is, with Terran, Zergs, and Protoss. I don't think that's necessarily bad. It's, but we already know how it ended, so it's not the same argument that I can make. Like, as if this were just coming out.
Even though their entrance into the world is not even explained. I would have liked to see them lean more into that with the other two factions. Though I say some because I don't get why the Celestials are still even so standard ground unit focused. Though they would add some cool things later on like the Carnivex, which is pretty cool, but I don't necessarily know if it fits as a Celestial. We have to talk about something, and that's appealing to super niche or competitive fans of a game. It's just usually a foolhardy endeavor, and I sensed some of that in Stormgate. Why was a game like this already so much focused on competition, including in balancing, before they were even close to launch? I mentioned this in my StarCraft 2 video, but despite StarCraft 2 being built for esports in many ways, StarCraft 1 in the end had a much longer and more popular overall esports success. That's because the game wasn't made for competition, it was adapted for it. There's a difference. Players built their own maps, tournament systems.
I really do hate how games are catering to the esports before they even have a player base. Like, if you don't have a player base, who's gonna watch the esports tournament? You know? The same with Siege. Siege still has these massive fucking tournaments, even though less and less people watch them. If someone watches that tournament, they're probably gonna watch for the person who's playing and not for the game. No, in Dawn of War 1, the most popular RTS on Warhammer, you have Space Marines, Orcs, Eldars, Chaos Space Marines, Imperial Guard, Tau, Necron, Sisters of Battle, Dark Eldar. Yeah, I know, but if you really want to narrow it down, you have human, mutant, alien, bad human, elite human, alien, robots, human, and elves. If I'm gonna be mean about it, right? I know they probably play completely different. I never played, but people do take like great offense to that. People who like it, right? I get it, but I was being crass on purpose, right? I don't mean it, but you see what I mean, right? If we like do it that way, everything can be simplified. Did you have whatever Moomy is? Man, fuck you. but you see what I mean, right? Whoops.
Formats, and even competitions. And this drove StarCraft to become a national sport video game in Korea, where it still reigns on a top 10 list today in 2026.
Hell yeah!
Stormgate had seemingly fallen into the same problems of StarCraft 2, and this wasn't totally surprising given the fact that the game had at least a dozen of the same developers. Or probably less, since they never mentioned the other ones. They had built a game for competition, without actually building out everything around it first. StarCraft 2 didn't even launch with a full custom game tool system.
That's generalization, but okay. Yeah, exactly. I was doing that on purpose, right? I couldn't find the words, but I did what you did with the Terrans, Zergs, and Protoss. Stormgate, they have humans, demons, and agents, right? I did the same thing, but they could easily just do the same and do evil human. Call it a different faction. Yeah, I know. Then they could have frost demons and fallen angels. It's very easy to do, right? It's not that difficult, right? See what I mean? They could have easily just done that too, and they would have doubled the playable factions, and they wouldn't need to do much more work. A few reskins and shit, and maybe different. The trick is they played basically the same as their StarCraft counterparts. Well, the guy we're watching the video on did say that the angels do play a lot different from the Protoss, even if they look similar. But I don't know. I can't judge it for myself. I never played that game. Probably never will.
Nor co-op, for example. Stormgate could have learned that lesson, and should have learned that lesson, and was supposed to go into early access with even less than that. Difference being, they didn't even have the pre-existing world and success to lean on like StarCraft 2 had. The talent Blizzard had at the time too was just absolutely insane, and you can see that in the Fallout. Nor did they have the actual experience or proper support even just outside like monetary stuff. Deciding to go after the smallest part of an RTS audience, the competitive audience, and I say that as a fan, was not a
Today
good
was
choice.
annoying. I was seeing double and blurry for a bit. Maybe I just need to sleep.
Because it means you're only
I've
looking.
been fucking telling you. I've been telling you. Go to sleep, you psychopath.
To slice the smallest piece of a pie, when the biggest parts of the RTS audience, the biggest piece of the pie, might shock you, but it's the single-player gamers. Hell,
Yeah.
I've played more Age of Empires 2 all the way to 4 against CPUs more than I've played against actual players, especially due to the scenarios in those.
I mean, if you really want to take a look at the autists, look at Reggie. Look at Reggie's fucking challenge runs in what was it? Total War Warhammer 3, was it? Holy shit, that guy. Yeah. The single players are actually, you know, really, really fucking huge. I'm not a psychopath. I just slept about 7 hours or less. Probably less. Freddy's tranquilizer. Thank you, Azurhurt. Please take the shot.
Games, but this is proven by looking at the sales of most popular RTS games and looking at how many players even go online, let alone played consistently. You realize this genre is sold largely on flavor, the strength of
You
the
better
campaign,
catch me.
AI scenarios, and AI.
You know, it's not that difficult to catch if you just fall down the stairs because your vision got blurred. Hey, you should really pick your challenges a bit better.
Custom game options. The things that Stormgate was lacking.
Well, fair
Early
enough.
access, early backers release would happen July 30th, 2024. And if you are as confused by that sentence as I was, we're in good company. Or bad. Or
What?
whatever.
Hold on.
Really, if you are-
I missed
early
that.
access and custom game options. The things that Stormgate was lacking in. Early access, early backers release would happen July 30th, 2024.
What?
And if you are as confused by that sentence as I
Backer
was, we're in good
release?
company.
What
or
is
bad.
that?
Or whatever. Early backer meant for people who essentially pre-ordered a free game that would grant
Oh.
them some benefits, such as playing earlier. The problem with this was that many players were confused as to when the actual FTP launch or free-to-play launch was supposed to come. And also doing it this way puts another
Never?
paywall on your content. Content people have barely gotten the chance to even test in the testing phases. The thing with feedback is you get a lot of it, and most of it is
Yeah, that's the trick. Most of people prefer play RTS and single player, like the campaign challenges, play with bots, all of that stuff. Yeah, I get it. I get that. I mean, with friends is probably fun, and there's a lot of content to do with friends, like the big Civ crossovers that VTubers did and stuff like that. You know, it's fun to look at when you're bad at playing the game, like I am. For example, I played Dawn of War 1 today with my friends against bots, and he liked that. Exactly. Pulls out comically large net.
it has to be discarded. The other not-so-trash stuff has to be parsed. The rest is the good stuff, but that stuff's rare in my experience as a QA tester for 15 years. But it must be dealt with, because if you don't deal with it, you will be slow to address the concerns that plague your player base. The key, though, is not losing your sight on your own vision, even with the input from the outside. The early input I had myself and saw repeated for Stormgate was rough. Much like the closed beta I already experienced, this was worrying to me when the game was set to launch rather soon. Early access or not, that tag doesn't actually stop your game from being taken seriously as a product whenever you actually charge people for things. Especially when you already had that level of money involved and crowdfunding. Stormgate felt like a pared-down version of Warcraft 3, and that game launched over 20 years ago. That's not a bar you should be unable to beat or pass in terms of like a pure feature set list. Worse, the game in early access still looked worse than StarCraft 2 did in alpha.
Yeah. If I look at StarCraft, I don't remember which one it was, but the one that I watched a complete playthrough of the campaign, specifically the bugs with like Kerrigan, where she was first at a human base and then she became the queen again. That one, I was amazed I was amazed at the cutscenes. Holy shit, were they good. I loved the cutscenes. Also, Kerrigan, hot as fuck. Bug form and human form. But RTS Esports is the most spectacular one. Fightings go right before it. I will be faster if I just tumble down a hill.
And worse isn't just about shiny graphics and nice looking things. It's about having distinctive looks and memorable looks. And it's not like Frost Giant could just throw more money at the problem. In fact, it turns out, according to a dedicated Redditor...
Bro, I remember that cutscene, I think. I'm not sure, but holy shit. Back in the day, this was amazing. That was some of the best cutscenes I've ever seen in my life at that point.
They were running out of money based on their projections. This would target them to run out of money in the spring of 2025, which doesn't totally seem out of the question, especially with what we know later on. That's why it's a dangerous gambit to be blowing through millions before you've even had your foundation solidly placed and figured out.
Shit.
But as you will see later on, the problem usually comes from the top. And in the case of Stormgate leadership, we're making questionable decisions and leading the game into a questionable direction. A few months would pass and the actual free-to-play early access launch would drop for Stormgate, August 13th, 2024, launching the game on Steam officially. Stormgate would manage to score a 62% score on Steam, giving it some mixed reviews. But first, let's cover the critical reception before going back to the player base. The critical reception for Stormgate was interesting, starting with IGN, and the same writer I just criticized regarding a tepid VTMB2 or Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 review without much substance to it. IGN would state that Stormgate was what was next, and then preface it with, well, they hope it is. What kind of critical voice is that? How can you publish that? Then they talk...
Wait, what? That's the funny thing. The first rendition of the campaign of Stormgate is basically Warcraft 3 Alliance campaign with the basically same plot, only with different characters. Oh. Oh, that's bad. That's terrible. Did I miss the point of that point in the video? God damn it. I'm bad. Listening comprehension is bad. But yeah, in that case, yeah, absolutely.
About how the game is very StarCraft 2 or Warcraft 3-like, yet lacks the budget and features of those games. There's also no mention about how much content is actually missing, like ranked 2v2, 3v3, and 4v4 period. Wasn't this supposed to be a social-focused game? Where was the custom games or custom game maker? Anyway, IGN would finish their review with a 7 out of 10, stating that the game still had miles to go, but pushes the classic RTS formula forward. And sorry, I just don't see how. Even if it was good at what it does and did, which was arguable, and I will argue that in a second, what new and innovative does Stormgate even bring? Camps already existed in Warcraft, towers existed in StarCraft, etc. The Escapist would give us a much more realistic review, claiming that the game is so bare bones and the campaign was not personally investment worthy at all. Day9, who is a big name in the RTS community, especially StarCraft, who did some promotional material with the game, would come out plainly calling the game a 1 or 2 out of 10, a totally abysmal score, claiming that it was really unfinished in all aspects of the game, campaign, PvP, factions, you name it. Tier 3 was also missing and Celestials were a work-in-progress faction. More complaints would be echoed from the player base, myself included, including the fact that the cinematics in the game were just totally lackluster, and that's me being nice, especially from the expectations that were set from the initial announcement trailer. Worse, the overall visuals in the game were totally forgettable, including a total boring and dull map environment behind everything.
Oh my god, the camera shading was so bad.
Unreal Engine 5 game either, looking less distinctive and having less distinct visuals, including their particle effects than games from 20 years before. The early access thing was a gamble, and seemingly only a gamble made purely from a monetization or money perspective. That's because Blizzard, which you guys should know, as ex-developers of Blizzard, created magic with some of these games by having extensive testing periods. Sure, they had way more money to do that than you, but you knew that.
What was that?
Having extensive testing
periods. Is this the Protoss class? Why the fuck? Bro had a whole stack of army small guys, and they disappeared.
That's because Blizzard, which you guys should know, as ex-developers
of
Blizzard,
at this shit.
Magic with some
they
of these
just
games
disappeared within seconds.
Sure, they had way more money to do that than you, but you.
Holy shit! Really, main characters go through the same plot points, same character development, only missions and setting was different. Who decided to do it? God damn. And no, I'm not going to sleep. It's not 11 p.m. yet. Yeah, 8 hours of sleep. You need 8 hours of sleep minimum. Yep, that's Celestial Armada. What the fuck? Why is this guy? I mean, he has a golden bar and extremely high HP, so I guess it's some kind of champion. But not even in StarCraft was it like that, right? God damn. Holy.
Knew that already. Why spend money on frivolous things like focusing on a game's competition scene early on, when it lacked basic game modes? And why showcase yourself so much and ask for more funding when you don't even have something to prove yet? Meaning your product can't prove what you're actually preaching. You lack basic game modes and have this totally mediocre campaign. These things are more important than a competition scene
Is
and
the
everything
old guy
else,
just
and doubly more
Kerrigan?
important than trying to go after so many creators, especially totally random.
Got about 5 hours yesterday. What happened to that 7 that you were talking about? You think I don't remember?
Random ones like Asmongold. How on earth is that the best mouthpiece for the game and a genre he doesn't even understand? There's probably like a dozen smaller creators from the RTS world that would have been much better suited for something like that. And cheaper. There was just so much money being spent.
StarCraft doesn't have horses in skirmish mode. Warcraft 3 does. Oh. I see. I said 7 or less. I meant not only yesterday, but the whole week. I mean, if we're talking the whole week, it's just yesterday. Roach King carry Stormgate, indeed.
The studio was in Orange County, California, where average developers are making like nearly 6 figures or more. Though I hear that many from the company worked from home. And was it even being spent in the right places, all this money? I can only imagine bad decision making from developers or investment funding pushing things on a timely timeline being the culprit here. But regardless, once you have a poor review on Steam, early access or not, people form this dark cloud that surrounds your game as they refuse to give it word-of-mouth referrals, harming its community and player base, and even badmouth the game further than that to keep players further away, truth or not. Things unfortunately would only get worse when a slew of drama would start spewing from Frostgiant, likely not helping their already struggling early access title either. For example, there's a strong hunch from some Reddit detectives that Tim Morton, the production guy turned CEO of the company, you guys know how much I love that, had a sock puppet account and was keeping his identity hidden. Seriously. Apparently someone named Void Legacy had been posting in defense of the company for a
There's
while.
There's a 99.9999999% chance.
How unprofessional,
Void
totally
Legacy
cringe,
was
and honestly
Tim.
totally RTS.
Oh
Worse,
my
Tim
God.
Morton would come out to address the concerns of the game, while basically dismissing them in the same token, even going as far to be mocking about people who are trying to give up, some advice and stuff like that. Now, there's a slew of bodies and cases that I've already investigated, where the culprit largely is a producer from a former large company who had some success. A typical role player in the company, just doing their thing, now having this massive amount of influence and wielding it questionably. There's not a lot to be impressed by when it comes to Tim Morton and his whole handling of Stormgate. More drama would spring up, as apparently Frostgiant had been creating fake reviews, and there were some strong accusations that were backing this up. In time for a Steam sale, apparently some actual developers at Frostgiant were leaving phony reviews, some without even having enough playtime to have a proper review, making it even more obvious. Tim Morton himself was reportedly a part of this, and yet took the time to insult people trying to understand the game's shaky direction. Look, Frostgiant theoretically had some time, with the full release of the game set to launch later in the year, but with how things have already been fumbled, would players even come back to the game that lacked more personality than an Unreal Engine community project? But this over-competitive focus of the game made worse by the fact that the only thing in the game was 1v1 essentially. It was turning players off hard, as the player base would drop to just 200 players peak. It's nearly impossible to play a game as a new player when a player base is in the low thousands, as StarCraft 2 has already largely shown. If it wasn't for co-op and mostly custom games and custom campaigns, StarCraft 2 wouldn't even have a population comparable to indie titles today.
God damn. Arguing about fucking sleep. What the fuck am I looking at? What in the bastard love child of Warcraft, StarCraft, and League of Legends is this? Freeway love child, I guess, bastard. And Warcraft 3 is very micro heavy. You need not only summon the hero and use his abilities, but also upgrade them, buy items, and that gave them passive and active items, which of course but manually. Of course. Yeah. God damn. Holy hell. It just seems botched all the way through. Yeah, we have a social aspect in the game. 1v1s. Thank you very much. No one asked for this. I mean, some people did, but you know.
Stormgate had some co-op, but lacked mostly everything else. So its first impressions for players was that it was objectively worse than the other game that they were coming from, or that this game had just been compared to. Which means you just pissed off a ton of nerds, and trust me, you don't want to do that.
It's exactly the same like fucking the Call of Duty streamers and content creators go to a different game like Marvel Rivals and are like, oh, faster respawn times, we need this, we need that. You know what this game needs? A battle royale. And you're just sitting there like, just go back to COD, please. Like, fuck off. Fuck off, you shit ass cunt. Like, what the fuck? You know exactly what I'm talking about, which scene. No. Yeah, no, it doesn't. But that's what it feels like. A little bit. Like, why do you come to, what, you know, go back to your bastardation of COD? Yes. I had a friend that slept for 13 hours. I could never. Maybe you should. Maybe you should try that. Try sleep. It does wonders for your mental health.
I know what that's like. The visual upgrade would happen for the game spring 2025, and although there were some quality upgrades here, at least by comparison, that's the problem. They were working with dirt before, so prettying up dirt isn't that much prettier. I mean, compare this to Tempest Rising, a game that had way less of a budget, and their game looks way better and more distinctive.
That is...
Look, I haven't seen
That is a big fucking difference, and this just looks like a modernization of today. Like, if we made everything that is today a bit fancier, you know? Except for the human armors, but that, you know, whatever.
Anyone wax poetic about
you know what I
Stormgate
mean? The tanks
heavily criticized by
specifically.
players and critics alike.
God damn.
That means that your art team just didn't work. You either get rid of most of them, or try to bring in a new team to bring in some light. Hire another developer as a third-party artist, or just accept that your game isn't going to work. Because having charming art styles and memorable character models is what makes an RTS game a great one. And when that much money is involved, you kind of need a great one. Think of the monkey unit in Age of Empires, the vultures in StarCraft 1, the flyers in Warcraft 3. All of these have distinct visuals, gameplay styles, and personalities, and obviously, you know, mechanically, usages at certain times of the game. They even have these fun and interesting and very character-related quips whenever you click on them, and they're so memorable, I can say...
And that's just a setup. The punchline is you can have more than one hero in the field for whom you need to do some action. And don't forget about base building, army hiring, and all RTS stuff. Good luck! Yup. Mental health sucks. Don't think sleep is gonna work. Try it. It'll help. Fuck, man. Ever heard of the saying, polishing a turd? Yes. A piece of shit, even if polished, is still gonna be a piece of shit. If you polish a piece of shit, even if it's shiny, it's still a piece of shit!
Most of them
I know what it means.
I read you, sir.
I read you, sir.
Need a light? Ah, yeah. You get the idea. Stormgate, even with these new visuals, was lacking that soul. A proper world and lore built from that, where the art system interacts and complements it. And, you know, characters throughout the world, whether through things like quips, also just bring some levity. And levity is important in such a game. These things just feel so disconnected in Stormgate. Even the hero units are totally forgettable. These were moments that Stormgate could have focused on and shined on, even if it lacked the other aspects. Moments that players like myself, even back from the peons in Warcraft 2, expected. Yes, sir. Yes, boss. These are non-negotiables. Instead, we have this mechanically decent husk of a game that doesn't make you want to come back for more unless you just feel like going hard in the paint. They could have just decided to build this really mechanical game that
The graphics look better, but why did the design take a drop? Huh? It's not actually that hard, but you can imagine why MOBA first was a mod for Warcraft 3. What is MOBA? Fuck. It's probably something obvious, but I don't get it. That's what the insane game we're watching a review of. It's just a shiny turd. Yeah, I know. I mean, we already know the ending to this. You don't get a say. but you know, design-wise, the top one is, in my opinion, better. Graphically, that one is better, obviously, right? But why did it take a downgrade design-wise?
It lacked everything else, and then people would have still been impressed and ready to see
Yeah,
more,
Tempest
which is kind
Rising.
of what we expected.
Which was basically Command and Conquer, but not from EA. Okay.
But instead, they tried to build the whole game and failed at that. Early on,
They
Stormgate
softened
talked
the
about making a
scars
game that
too
worked in
much.
team play as
There
well,
were
and was more
scars? There is! You can't even see them no more! Wait, you can see it better when it's dark. Oh my god, yeah, they did, holy shit.
balance there. Something that was kind of lacking in RTS games. Instead, we have a game in 2025 that still doesn't have a 3v3 mode or more.
Oh.
These false promises, Stormgate would finally drop their
What?
alpha. I said alpha or more. These false promises, Stormgate would finally drop
Edit? Mistake? Maybe? I don't
their
know.
alpha, I said alpha, to the terrain editor they
Alpha.
had, June 2025, in time for the upcoming full release. Where was this particular piece of
Whoa.
content, and why wasn't it a #1 priority? Think about it. You could have had people building maps for you for 3 years. Imagine how good they could have gotten. I mean, even just recently when they released the Stormgate editor and freed things up, someone made a fully
See, if I don't point out, you'd think they removed them entirely. Yeah! That was a terrible fucking mistake they did. Like, look, stars can make someone unique, ugly, or unique, but still pretty. Depends, right? Or they can make someone badass. The story behind scars can be important, you know. Some scars look silly, some scars look cool, some scars make you ugly. You know. Hell, they covered up one of her eyebrows. Damn, okay, what the fuck?
MOBA. Imagine if that was
Yeah,
someone's first
yeah, I mean,
experience.
you mean the second scar. Yeah. Seriously, MOBA, multiplayer online battle arena. Oh, your League of Legends Heroes of the Storm, Defense of the Ancients 2, Dota 2. You get the idea. Yes, but hear me out. I never played MOBAs. If I count all my MOBA time together, I'd have around 30 minutes of playtime in MOBAs. I never cared to put that in my lexicon.
Experience playing the game. Now, if you have less than 70 players on average playing the game, you need a community to fuel the community, of course.
Of course.
You have to give them tools for that. And you can't give them tools after they've already left. And you've only kind of given them tools because the trigger system wasn't even fully implemented either. That's why I think StarCraft 2 had a late resurgence in that aspect, because it lacked a proper editor at launch and also lacked good custom game maker.
Gun and Law was first created as mods for Warcraft 3. That's the story. Goddamn. Huh. Did I know that? I don't think I knew that.
Here's because of
That's
their
pretty
ridiculous policies. They would still eventually, though, end up with some great custom maps, whether arcade style or not. Custom maps that Stormgate's devs could have lifted as ideas and presented them as more game modes or custom games themselves. There's just a general lack of care and thought when discussing the actions of Frost Giant in relation to the player
Yeah.
base and their desires for the game. And if a company is continuing to be disconnected like that for long and already blowing through all their money, it's not going to end well. Everything was
Yeah.
riding on the full release of the game, which took place August 5th, 2025. While many took it easy on Stormgate the first time around, I think many more would actually call the game out for what it was at this point. A tepid upgrade from what existed before, especially with so much lacking in the game. Was it even an upgrade? It didn't have modes and certain mechanics that already existed and were expected. Well, there's always one exception. Yep, you guessed it. It's another IGN review from the
You have too much important stuff to do. So, not sure if you're gonna sleep at. The fuck you mean? The fuck you mean important stuff? Like what? You're watching the stream right now and chatting. What study? What are you supposed to do? Supposed to be doing right now? I'm flattered that you're here in the stream instead of studying. But study! Like what the fuck? Oh my god. Study, but I'm watching stream. You gotta concentrate. Stop watching stream. Put on fucking Minecraft music and study, bro. My memory is shit. So? Mine is too. My muscle memory ain't that shit though. Like, if you're telling me you can't sleep because you gotta study, but you're here in the chat complaining about your memory and complaining that you can't. Literally, I had the nickname Goldfish. Fair enough, but if you complain about having to study and you can't sleep, maybe turn off the stream. And, you know, do what you're supposed to. My guy. Last time I didn't study, I passed. All right. Okay. Cool. Are you gonna go your whole life without studying now? All right. Just because I made one thing flawlessly, am I gonna be a master at it now? I think there's where all my luck went. God damn. I mean, congrats, but you gotta have consistency, right? Now, if you told me you aced 10 tests in a row without studying, okay, fair. There is a, you know, there is a certain oomph to it, right? I haven't studied in some years, past all those years. Okay, fair enough. So there is consistency. But if you're gonna study right now, then you should concentrate on studying. If you're telling me your excuse for not sleeping is studying, which I don't believe you, I gotta be honest, I don't believe you, then you should be studying right now! Put the phone down or the keyboard and study! God damn it. I can't believe I'm the one saying those things. God fucking... Look what you made me do.
The same writer, they would rate the game higher, at 8 out of 10, and state that Stormgate still has a long road ahead of it, but it's already a special game, combining the familiar and fresh into a satisfying RTS experience. They would then...
I did try studying, but I just doodle in my notebook. So you weren't gonna study in the first place. Yet you're telling me you can't sleep because you gotta study. Contradictions! But yeah. Hello there. Hi. Nope, wasn't planning on. Go to fucking sleep, please. Please, at least you're gonna function if you sleep, okay?
Repeat their top point. And no, I'm not kidding. It's the same words. How on earth are you rating this game an 8 and in the same breath claiming it's a much improved game as if it's still not good enough? Because you even then admit that the road ahead is still long. This is just like insane glazery. Meanwhile, read the recent player reviews.
Oh my god, my guy. Let's play non-DMC music to fall asleep to. Oh my god, hold on.
A satisfying RTS experience. They would then proceed.
No! 11 p.m. is the latest you should be sleeping. School starts 10 a.m. tomorrow, so I have enough time. You need a sleep schedule that is consistent. And maybe you should get used to having a proper breakfast as well. Seriously. We are concerned for you. I am nagging you because I care. And I can't believe I'm the one who's there. Holy shit! I rarely eat breakfast. That's probably one of the issues. I know, because I had that issue. Oh my god. My sister had too. God. All right. I can't believe I have all these things that happen to unhealthy people when I'm being so unhealthy. You are more concerned about me than friends and family. Okay, you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends. It's gonna take a while, but damn, bro. You know what? I have an early wake up tomorrow. I will go to sleep now. Good night, everyone. See, Mad Chemist gets it. Good night, Mad Chemist. Like, goddamn. I can't believe I'm the fucking one nagging. Look what you made me do. Oh my god.
Need to repeat their top point. And no, I'm not kidding. It's the same words. How on earth are you rating this game an 8 and in the same breath claiming it's a much improved game as if it's still not good enough? Because you even then admit that the road ahead is still long.
Are you? I'm pretty good. We're watching How a Game Died right now.
It's just like insane glazery. Meanwhile, read the recent player reviews. They're anything but glazy and present real criticism, such as how the game originally charged for a $40 Kickstarter that would give you the Ultimate Edition, and then dropped another, more jam-packed edition on Steam at release. This made many OG supporters feel cheated, and understandably so, especially when you had to purchase the new campaign anyway, even if you previously backed the game. There was just no respect for the audience here. Criticisms were echoing concerning the lack of unit variety as well, and overwhelming ubiquity. And well, the game launched unfinished. I have to say that again, meaning the whole early access crap was just that. It was crap. It's still an unfinished game even at the full launch. And remember, they took so much effort to draw comparisons to games that were incredibly well polished, and then complain when their audiences expected something that was even close to the same. And before people try and defend them, or even Frost Giant does, and says something like, oh, it's not fair they expected us to be like Blizzard. No, I actually disagree. I think they expected you guys to even just be a level right below, and that would have been just fine. There's no competition in this market, and you can't pull.
At least they're still alive. Are you arguing with me right now for staying barely alive with the sleep schedule of a autistic owl? Are you arguing with me about that? No. All right. I get it. Your environment. Yes. No. I get it. Your environment doesn't seem all too healthy the way you've explained it. I understand. You watched that one video about me, the first one you ever did. You get that I know where that's coming from, and I was rather lucky with the people I've met. I was. But this is gonna sound a little stupid. You also have to take responsibility for it. I thought I wouldn't make it to where I am now. Exactly. All you have to do is keep walking. Find a reason to do it. It's fine. Any reason is fine. Even if your sole reason at the start is to just get home and get on a PC. If that is your sole reason to keep going, do it. You will find more reasons. You will. You will realize the beauty of life. You will. I promise you. I have no reason though. Then make me your reason. You seem like you've been here very often, and that's okay. I appreciate you. But you also need to take care of yourself. It's okay. Yes, Daily, I noticed. And well, that is a rather hefty responsibility on me. If that keeps you going, I'll gladly do so. So come on. Let's keep going. Walk that tunnel until the day shows. Because from your channel I get comfort somehow. That's good. It doesn't need to be a big grand reason. You don't gotta win a Nobel Peace Prize or some shit. Just finding comfort in creating something, for example, like fan art or just drawings in general is fine. Just keep drawing, for example. You seem pretty good at it too. So just do that, keep going, and you'll get somewhere. Even if you have to do a job for some time that you don't like. That's okay. Difficulties in life will shape the person you're gonna be. And depending on what you do with that, it makes you a good or bad person. Now, I will not tell you what a good or bad person is. That's for you to decide. But I don't think I am a good person, personally. I'm trying to be. Right? But come on. Who's gonna make a stellar fan art? Not me! I just make goated memes making fun of movies sometimes. And I appreciate that as well. I openly say, you can do whatever here, right? So come on. Stop all this depresso and get some espresso. No, don't actually, don't. I take that back. Go to sleep! Oh shit. Made my keyboard wet. God damn it, clean that up and go to sleep! Please! Alright. Let's get back to the react. God damn. Oh, that was a tangent.
Marketing card and then try to trade it back after people expected to see the results. It wouldn't take long following the launch, and Tim Morton, the company's CEO, was already threatening possible layoffs, following the game's massive underperformance. While this is understandable when a game falters, you still don't get participation points for a failed project. Sometimes games don't work. Sometimes art doesn't work. And that's
also, this would be a great opportunity to buy gamer subs using code Kirsche to get your sleep on. Buy gamer subs AFK flavor. It gives you big comes and big sleeps. Oh my god. Alright, there. The shell is done.
Why we chronicle it here on the Death of a Game series. While launch would bring back up the peak numbers to nearly 1,000 players, within 2 months the population would drop to below 100 players peak, becoming essentially an inoperable matchmaking pool or game. Tim Morton would come out a month later and claim that in order for Stormgate to survive and, well, Frost Giant in general, they had to make a new game. They were not really forthright with the details, but would claim that Stormgate would continue to see updates and theoretically, as stated, even more due to the supposed theoretical success
if Gamer Subs wants it tomorrow, but probably not,
of the next theoretical game. Look, there's probably a good chance they are actually working on a new game, so it's not that theoretical, since I haven't heard about Fire Rings yet. But how much faith do you have in that new game anyway, when you have the CEO of the company making excuses for the game, claiming it was market forces and people being unreasonable? And I don't even want to bother putting up that nonsense on the screen. Just search Tim Morton Stormgate, and it will probably come up on Medium.com. But you can't grow as a company or make the right decisions with that kind of attitude. And it was a further spit in the face of those who actually invested into your game. Throughout its multiple investment rounds, remember? Things would go quiet for about a month, before in a surprising turn of events, and welcomed, regardless of the circumstances, would be announced a community patch and update, announced in the early December, and then set to launch fully December 30th, 2025, to which it did. This community patch meant that the developers were basically no longer working on the game, putting the game into what we call maintenance mode, and then electing a janitor meant to look after whatever was left on the game, which is usually like a sole developer or a couple of them. The same thing happened to many other games, including Blizzard games like Heroes of the Storm. So that made what actually came next, which was a fantastic update by the way, a bit bittersweet. This massive update, made in tandem with the game's hardcore community, since that was basically all that was left anyway, would add 30 new community-made maps, 4 new units, ranked 2v2, and would fully open up the map editor, which had launched back in the summer. This update truly is the best thing to hit Stormgate, bringing far more variety and parity to the game. But you can tell when a player base is snoozing on a game when you have an update such as this barely move the population up to 147 peak players, and under 40 still on average. I have to give the community credit though for seemingly putting in more work than the developers did, and even doing a better job.
Of course, because they cared! The developers didn't care about the game, like at all, by the way, because I saw your YouTube video. I started watching Twitch again in years. Alright, I take responsibility for that. That's not necessarily a good thing. Twitch is a very predatory platform, to say the least. I don't think I did anything good by I'm glad you came to my channel, but I feel guilty now. You're the only channel I watch on Twitch. All right, at least you don't get preyed upon too much by the platform. But we're all prey to it, sadly. Damn. Wait, wasn't that game paid to play? It's free on Steam. Yeah, the early access was at the early access and shit.
It's more to what I said regarding how much better it would have been to have this community involved in map making years before, when they ended up making the majority of the maps in the game in this update and the best maps in RTS history anyway. But it was seemingly too little too late. The player base had moved on, and that's especially typical with overly competitive games that lack other ways to enjoy and experience the game. Because your options are get burnt out or get beat up. Those are your options. It hasn't proven the best formula for outright attracting new players, which is why there are some truth to the rumors that RTS games haven't been working as much. That's why fighting games, for example, have added systems to try and fix this. Pre-ranked ranks, tutorials, training modes, and etc. This is where I think that RTSs have been kind of in the Stone Ages regarding that. And part of that is that the gameplay in the campaign is nothing like the gameplay online due to meta and strategy. And of course the campaign is usually on a fixed map with a certain amount of outcomes. It might sound like it's disjointed, but I actually think that the campaigns need to evolve to attract non-competitive PvP players, and better prepare them for custom games and ranked ladder. Stormgate didn't have that, so if you try to play right now, even in the lower elo brackets, you're probably going to get watched for a little while until you learn the game. And once you start learning it, you can only play against the players who have already mastered it. Good luck. The difference between a silver or like low bronze player who has a couple of games versus like one who has thousands of games is still a pretty big gap. I mean, there's a reason that StarCraft 2 was never that good for casual players, and it was regarding decisions Blizzard took in development when making the game.
Yeah, because they made it esports.
That game took years to improve at that aspect, but due to its name recognition and popularity, was able to and see the success of that growth as well. With Stormgate, you had an even worse casual game, and for some reason, so many video game developers in all sorts of genres just don't seem to understand that without a casual game, you basically have nothing. The RTS markets were games like Tempest Rising, which reportedly had a much smaller budget than Stormgate by the way, and is a much better game in my experience, including with polish and overall look and feel, would have their devs claim that only 5% of their audience would even play competitively. Other assessments by other games and pundits suggest 80% of the audience or more preferring non-competitive activities. I think it's because RTS games are difficult. They're intense, and people have then extrapolated that, and the success of games like Age of Empires, StarCraft, and Warcraft that probably went outside of whatever bubble they were in, competitively, have skewed that even more. Or players from the outside think that, oh, everyone playing these games is super competitive, when that's not the case. Wanna know how much competitive ladder I played in Warcraft 3, period? 0. Wanna know how many times I played Helm's Deep? You don't want to actually know. See what I mean though? The timeline has ended, fellow detectives, and this case has come to an end. While I don't relish in covering Stormgate earlier than I had hoped to, or intended, it was necessary for me as a massive fan of RTS games and someone who covered the game that the game was basically modeled after already, StarCraft 2. And for the people who think that shilling is even like a serious word in my vocabulary in my trench coat, my series is built on covering lesser known games and failures, and sometimes iconic hits. Why would I not want to cover such a major failure like Stormgate? It's the perfect case for me, especially since I tested the game early on. But speaking of cases, let's do our thing and finish this case first. The music is playing, detectives, and it's time to answer the question as to why Stormgate failed to garner an audience and maintain one. It lacks the proper soul and personality. It lacks polish and fine-tuning, and proper community building and focus. Poor general
came
company
at the very
and game
end
direction.
of its life cycle.
It focused too much on being competitive. The death of comparison and shadow of those that came before. And just like that, like the flash it exploded from, it's gone in another flash. Stormgate, another attempt at an RTS, in an attempt to revive the genre back to its former glory or whatever, became another case added to the filing cabinet. While I usually like to end these videos with words of advice or some positive encouragement, I don't think the devs at Frost Giant, at least those in charge, would read or take it to heart anyway. So instead I will say congrats old school RTS gamer haters who will shit on anything that's not their favorite game. You guys at least got what you wanted. For the rest of us, we got a mediocre game that was supposed to build upon StarCraft 2. No future Blizzard RTS in sight, and despite the upcoming dawn of War 4, some slim pickings in the world of RTS. But there's a silver lining in all of this.
But the shots look like they're not doing anything anymore.
Doing just fine, just not the whole real-time kind. But as long as strategy games and grand strategy continues to do well, I think we're always going to end up seeing one-offs here and there in the world of the RTS genre, a subgenre of the strategy games genre. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments below why you think Stormgate failed or your impressions with the game, in case I missed anything or you'd like to share your thoughts. Until the next case.
Hiya, friends! It's me, Buzzworth Billy! What's everyone's favorite party platforming game featuring co-op dungeons filled with
Is that a shell? Is that an ad? Oh, it's the next episode. Oh. I did fail some subject in the last year, religion, German, and Spanish. Oh, damn, okay. Finally have motivation to draw a project I wanted to work on for some time. I'm not gonna sleep. Look, my whole speech was about taking responsibility and sleeping! Why are you doing the opposite? But I'm glad you at least found some motivation. Wait, Dune Awakening is also died? I don't know. It seems like it. If I sleep, my motivation would be gone. You have 2.5 hours. Do what you must. But sleep. Come on. What's wrong, Zerhead? Yeah, this was very, very fun. This was Nerd Slayer Studios. And the game Stormgate. It was very, very fun to listen to argue about as well. Yeah, check them out. Subscribe. Yeah.